Hello and welcome once again to the Omnia Performance podcast. And once again, we have the absolute pleasure of having Tom McClure here. Tom McClure is our lead nutritionist, and we'll get to know him over the course of this episode, as well as many others. And we're excited to have you here, Tom.
Thanks, Jonny.
Welcome again. Welcome back, shall we say. Before we go any further, the usual kind of housekeeping blurb. You can help me now, Tom. You're as experienced as I am with this. We if I forget anything, you jump in. But we want you to subscribe, rate, review, click, share, love, and boast about your interaction with the Omnia Performance podcast. Check the show notes, all the kind of stuff that's there. Follow the links, and generally love us as much as we love you. Have I missed anything?
That's a good plethora.
That's a smorgasbord
of things to do. Love that.
Do all the nice things. I think that could be a nice underline. So we're here today to discuss supplements, ultimately, and our recommendations or our thoughts, I suppose, as well, on supplements, our experience and the athletes we've worked with, etc., but try and break down kind of our feelings on that front. As we did last time when you and I were together, I'm gonna lean on your expertise and your authority, and we'll discuss these things and see if we can't come away with a kind of a short list of things that we would recommend. But I guess before we crack on with kind of talking about supplements, it's good to drive home the foundations. Would you agree? And just say, look, supplements. I'll let you lead with this in a second, but supplements ultimately are supplements. We're supplementing a good quality diet, and we're going to kind of try and separate out what we see as dietary norms and dietary expectations, non-negotiables, you might say, into what might be performance supplements, and in doing so kind of delineate the difference there a little bit. So let's drive home, and I'll hand over to you, Tom, if I can. Let's drive home those kind of fundamentals. What are we saying before we get to supplements? What do we want to underpin first?
Fantastic. Yeah, supplements. The clue is in the name. We're looking to supplement your diet. Sometimes it's very easy to think you're starting a new regime, you're starting a new training protocol. I'm going to go online and spend a lot of money and buy a whole load of supplements. Often there is very much a food first approach to look at, and I will do this when working with athletes. If they have gaps in their nutrition, my role is often to try and minimize any nutrient deficiencies, but there'll always be a food first approach to do that because there's a lot of value in doing that, whether you're looking at, adding more fiber in as well, whether you're adding more diversity to their diet's going to improve their gut health, and often cheaper as well. Yeah. It doesn't always mean that if you take a supplement, there are things to consider in terms of the quality of the supplement. Some supplement companies are better than others in terms of dosages or product quality. You have to remember that some companies are in this to make money, not to actually make you a healthier individual. So there's lots of things to consider. I definitely think there are, for me, some kind of non-negotiable supplements that you can look at in terms of things that are going to help you hit a certain quota of vitamins and minerals that are really hard to derive the amount you need from food alone.
Yeah, and what might they be? I mean, you touched briefly on companies that would sell. We know that it's a capitalist world we live in. Nobody's got a problem with anybody making a profit, but it shouldn't be at the risk of people's health. But we do operate under the banner of certain companies that we enjoy their products. And I guess, like I said at the top of the show, really is what we want to do is kind of separate what we see as being supplements and what we see generally as being as foods. And I'll kind of throw it out there and say that at this point, unless you're going to disagree, which I don't think you will, we'd probably look at protein supplements as protein shakes, protein, whatever other form these things come in. And there's lots of crazy, great things that ways you can ingest your protein now as being legitimate, strong, positive food choices. So rather than sit that in the performance supplements category, which arguably it does, but for the sake of our this kind of separation today, I'd say, I guess you would say too, that protein powders, protein supplements, etc., sit kind of within that kind of quality food category, correct?
Yeah, 100%. It's a very convenient, sometimes cost-effective, often portable way for athletes to hit their protein target. we all lead busy lives, might be in and out the office, might be traveling. Sometimes it can be hard to get quality protein on the go. So a supplement, like I said, whether it's in a powder that you add to an existing meal, like yogurt or porridge, whether you take it as a standalone shake, add it to a smoothie. There's a range of, protein yogurts and bars. And like I say, there's a whole plethora of different products out there. I think they're a really useful tool and form part of most athletes' nutrition plan.
But most people now as well. I mean, we were talking just yesterday about the availability of certain things, and we'll come to sort of the availability of these performance supplements we want to talk about, but the availability of protein in that kind of the form we're talking about, like protein bars or protein powders or protein drinks straight off the shelf. It used to be that you'd have to seek them out in what's the name of that big sport, GNC, the big protein supplement shop that you would get sometimes in big super, and anyway, you would go in there to get your protein, or you would maybe go online, or you'd have to find somebody specialist. But now it's local supermarkets, and supermarkets are doing their own brands because they see the benefit of this stuff. So I think we're at the point now where this is so prevalent and so obvious and so available that finding good products isn't hard anymore, and nor is justifying the use of them.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think that if we're building out a little bit of a non-negotiable list, we're going to stick protein powder on that. I would often recommend to people shop around a little bit. Some people have preferences in terms of taste, flavors, digestive issues. Sometimes don't be afraid to pay a little bit more for a better quality product.
You would do that with your food as well, wouldn't you? But
it will blend better. You might get less kind of bloating. Sometimes if you go cheap, you're going to get what you're
going to feel it. Yeah. You do the same if you're buying your fish that way, wouldn't you?
Exactly. I think the next kind of two to consider that have a health benefit but also to have a performance benefit is vitamin D and omega-3. Now, you can eat food that contains both of these. Sure. You can eat oily fish for omega-3. You can eat fish for vitamin D. You can eat mushrooms. You can get omega-3 from walnuts and chia seeds. I think we were only having a conversation yesterday about the hype that chia seeds got a few years back.
Magical chia seed.
But it's very hard to derive the amount that you need from food alone.
Yeah.
And
especially as athletes.
Especially as athletes. And I've done a lot of blood work with professional athletes and kind of good quality everyday athletes. And often these two markers come back as having kind of nutrient deficiency. Most people who live kind of the UK, Northern Hemisphere, we don't get a lot of sunlight consistently. And even if it is sunny outside, we're indoors all day. Yeah, so our exposure to vitamin D is low. So having a vitamin D supplement for me is a bit of a non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. You can have a slightly different dosage depending on time of year, and you can get your blood work done to find out potentially exactly what you need. But for most people, it's going to be between 1,000 to 3,000 IUs per day. Yeah,
which can be taken, again, many forms. You don't have to knock back a tablet. There's lots of ways to ingest that. But that's a good recommendation, you would say then. 1 to 3,000 IUD every day. And you could really hone that in from a personal perspective if you wanted to go that extra, which is a great idea for athletes if they have access to that. If you want to go that extra yard and get your blood work done, then you're going to find out just what. And you could do that perhaps seasonally, and perhaps there's all kinds of ways you can spin that particular recommendation. Is that you could do it seasonally in terms of the summer, winter, etc., or you could do it seasonally in terms of your output, because there's going to be sort of physical attributes or physical things that you're doing that are going to deplete certain minerals and vitamins, etc. Anything else?
Just with vitamin D is that often people link it to immune function, staying healthy, which obviously is very important.
Nobody wants rickets, that's for sure.
And I've always said to people, a healthy body is a high-performing body, so it's important to remain healthy. But maybe what some people might not realise is the link between vitamin D and force and power production. Yeah. So as a performance supplement, it's going to help your force and power production. Whether you're lifting weights, whether you're running on the track, you're on the bike, it's going to help. Well,
this is this interesting thing. We discussed this before the show, didn't we? Is where do you break down what is a performance aid and what is a kind of a healthy food supplement? And there's a very good positive kind of blur between the two. As you say, from a pure performance perspective, vitamin D is a big player as well, isn't it? As is the other thing you mentioned, which is omega-3. But let's just stick for the moment with the health benefits of that. We could eat oily fish, as you say. I think to get what we need, especially as athletes, and especially with the the produce that we have access to now, to get the amount you would need for optimal function, a word I hate, but let's go with it. You're going to have to eat a lot of oily fish, and if you have the access to a supplement that does that job for you, why would you not just do that? What would be your dosage recommendation on that, and what do you see the sort of immediate benefits with omega-3?
So yeah, omega-3 will help reduce inflammation markers. Now we're crossing that line again. We're blurring that line between health and performance. But from a health point of view, we all have stressors in our lives, whether that's work, family, kids, insert other options here. But if we can reduce...
Of which there are many.
Yes, if we can reduce inflammation markers, again, we're just looking at that healthy body, high-performing body, the better your body can recover from stress, whether that's stress from, let's say, external stresses or stress from training, potentially you can then have a high repeatability of output and effort. Yeah,
simple as that. The benefits, I encourage anybody to go away and look at the benefits of omega-3 and then come back and tell me about the negatives, and that would be a short conversation, wouldn't it? There's all sorts of, like you say, the cognitive function. You could go to town on this, and a whole episode just on that particular thing. Yeah. One more before we slip over and say now we're talking directly about performance supplements. Tell me a little bit about electrolytes. This is where we kind of blur that line very much. So are we talking here about those performance benefits? But clearly, electrolytes there are health benefits there as well. Staying hydrated. Tell me about that.
Yeah, electrolytes are getting a lot of hype. And for good reason.
Yeah.
One, from a habitual point of view, most people don't drink enough water. So look, I'm all for if people are going to use electrolytes to consume more water, particularly in the first part of their day. We all dehydrate to some extent overnight. We have a period of fasting where we don't consume food or drink. So we're going to wake up dehydrated. We're going to wake up with lower blood sugar levels. So consuming water first in the morning, and sadly, the tap water where we are has a lot of minerals and that taken out of it. So if by using electrolytes, it's going to help transport that water into your cells. So you're going to be more optimally hydrated, your favorite word, optimal, which is going to help tenfold. It's going to help improve gut health. It's going to help improve cognitive function, alertness. And then obviously from a performance point of view, we're crossing over into improving aerobic function. We're looking at, improved kind of how RPE feels in training, going to better train more effectively, more sets, more reps, better output. So that it really creates a bit of a catalyst effect in terms of drinking more water, drinking a better quality of water by using electrolytes. And obviously, if someone does have a high sweat rate or training for longer sessions, you can use electrolytes in that performance way. But actually, just from a general, let's say, health point of view, getting up, getting hydrated, and setting yourself up for success, I think it's such a great habit to instill.
It really is, mate, because as soon as you do instill that habit and sort of work towards that as being, we talk about stacking habits and all the rest of it, but one of the easiest ones to do to get up and think, well, I'll hydrate before I do anything else, and probably a reasonable pushback on let's smash a coffee first thing. Well, hydrate first and allow your body to set up and all the rest of it. But I can tell you from personal experience, that little habit, which I've been doing now for a very, very long time, the switch on benefit, you feel, right, I'm ready. And so you can experience that immediate cognitive uplift just from being hydrated and just adding those electrolytes and allowing that kind of salt balance to reconnect everything. It is where we can, as you say, where we can start to say there are massive performance benefits, as you've alluded to. But that kind of brings us kind of across that board, and we'll shut the door on that blurred line now, where we're talking about what is great for health, what are great food supplements, and what kind of contributes to an overall healthy diet. And those things that we've just discussed, I think, kind of we can shove harder into that category, but they do bleed across that kind of spectrum. But for the sake of performance supplements, we've got 4 or 5 that we want to kind of run through. Both of us, in case anybody's looking on, have made notes because we want to make sure that we're not kind of getting our recommendation and doses wrong, because some of these can be kind of can fluctuate between individuals and things. But we're going to discuss them one by one, and I think the first one and certainly the most research, you'll agree, supplement that we would say is arguably inarguable in terms of sports benefit is creatine.
100%. Yeah. Again, getting a lot of hype.
Yeah.
For the right reasons.
For the right reasons, yeah.
Creatine you can derive from food, from red meat. Herring is very high in creatine.
Did you know, I've got my notes here, I like this little fact. Do you know what creatine means? Well, the Greek word for creatine is creat, which is meat.
There we go.
So there you go. So it's derived from meat because it is meat.
So if someone's plant-based, vegan, vegetarian, it's going to be very hard for them to get high levels of creatine in their diet. Creatine, the more I read about it, the more research that keeps coming out, the more I believe everybody, whether you train or not.
That's a great thing. This is going back to that blur, that spectrum. It's like, listen, if we're talking about performance benefits, if you're not looking for performance benefits, consider creatine anyway,
Yeah. It's going to help improve strength, power, potential for muscle mass production. It increases your ATP energy output. There's now research coming out for endurance athletes. It helps with cognitive function, alertness. So the benefits versus, I think, the cost. And obviously what we're talking about here is there is scientific research, multiple papers, multiple studies.
Hundreds and hundreds now.
That this supplement works.
Yeah. And the flip side of that is what it takes away is very little, if not nothing. There are, I guess we could argue that there are, you mentioned earlier on about picking the right protein powder because of the gut interaction and the GI upset and all the rest of it. There are some people who there are some non-responders for a start with creatine, but there are some people who find it kind of hard to ingest. But that can actually be, there are so many ways now that you can buy and use creatine that might just be finding the best way of getting it in the system for you. So you might have had a bad experience with powders before and you think, oh, creatine's not for me, but maybe try again because there's so many ways of getting that in your system that it's almost foolproof.
There's a little bit of research that shows as well that creatine is absorbed better around your workouts. Mm-hmm. Your body's more perceptible to take on nutrients post-workout anyway.
Yeah.
That post-workout window does exist. So it may be that pairing it with carbohydrates, pairing it with protein will help its absorption.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've had a little bit of feedback from people that, they experience a bit of bloating. You could always split the dose. You haven't got to take it in one hit. So you could split your dose across the day, particularly if you've got a powder or you've got tablets, you can split it in half. A standard creatine monohydrate will be great for 99% of people listening.
Yeah.
There is a German company, kind of Creapure, that's a little bit finer, but for most people, 100% creatine monohydrate will tick the box and give you everything.
It's the same as protein, mate. You can buy these proteins that assimilate better into the system because of this, that, and the next thing, and ultimately it makes, as long as you get it in, it doesn't make any bloody difference. Dosage then. In fact, before we go on to dosage, you mentioned about something you said triggered a thought in me there. Was it used to be the perceived notion, incorrect, that you had to load this stuff before you. So people found it really kind of obnoxious to have 50 bloody scoops of the bastard every day for a week before they felt that was going to be effective. Not necessary, correct?
Not necessary. It will just take a bit longer to become fully saturated.
Yes, this saturation you're looking for. So you can saturate faster, you can saturate slow. Ultimately, it will saturate, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Creatine is something you need to take every day. So some people might take it as part of maybe a pre-workout product. Sometimes it's stacked with something else, but then you obviously may only take it the days that you train.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would always be have it in a standalone product so that you can take it consistently 7 days a week. You can take it 52 weeks a year. There used to be a bit of noise about, creatine cycling, etc. It takes anywhere between kind of 3 to 4 weeks to become fully saturated. So look, if you do go on holiday and you don't take your creatine with you, you're not going to lose all your gains. It will just take you a couple of weeks to get back to being fully saturated again. You can load it if you want to, but there's no need to. I think really sometimes that's a bit of a marketing spin.
Of course it is, yeah.
It means you go through the product quicker.
You're going to have more
You've got to buy
quicker.
some more.
Yeah.
So 5 grams per day is the research dose.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of research that shows that if you're a heavier athlete, you could push up a little bit more towards 8 grams, maybe even 1 gram per kilogram body weight. But I would say go with 5 grams, have it for 3 to 4 weeks, see how you feel. If you are a heavy athlete and want to push up a little bit more, then do so and see how that feels.
Yeah. The one caveat that I would add here in terms of creatine's interactions, it draws a little bit of water into the system as well. So as you're taking creatine, same as carbohydrate in a certain sense, but as you're taking creatine, you may find that you end up heavier on the scale quite quick. And that could be bothersome to people, so factor that in beforehand. I'm thinking more from we cycle it in and out a little bit with combat athletes in terms of just allowing them that opportunity to make sure that it doesn't affect their scale weight. But I mean, that's a very slight addendum there to the overall kind of this is positive. It's just be aware of that just in case you go, oh my God, I've put on X amount. It's like, well, not really. You're floating a bit of extra water through there.
Yeah, spot on. Very good.
I don't think there's much more to say about it. I have little notes, but these are sort of wow notes as we were just making sure we were researching this stuff before. I've seen that there's even papers out there talking about the effects on depression, bipolar disorder, all kinds of research. Creatine is becoming. Please don't ever quote me on this. I am saying it out loud, but it's almost like a wonder product, isn't it? It's like what do they call it? A superfood. Let's never say that again, but. A very interesting and very exciting supplement indeed. And top of our list. I guess we're probably not putting these things in priority order, but I would say creatine is almost, going back to your phrase, a non-negotiable. You know, why would you not? There are a few caveats there where we can say, okay, in your case not, but I've very few. And I've not dealt with, I've thousands of athletes and I've met maybe 2 out of those that I would say, okay, maybe creatine's not for you. One extra thing I would say is that as you were talking about the way that you take these things, that can sit within your same stack as the vitamin D, the omega-3. This kind of morning, people take them at a certain time of day and all the rest. Well, make sure you take that in every day and just make that part of your habit.
Great. Yeah, very good. Very good.
Okay, let's move on. Another much loved, certainly by me, product or supplement, I guess, and many people don't think of this as a supplement at all, but caffeine. Caffeine as an ergogenic aid, as a performance supplement, has a huge amount of research also, and the benefits are vast. Talk to me about caffeine.
Yeah, caffeine is, I think people would think about, well, just a strong cup of coffee, etc.
Yeah, which I love.
But again, the research, the data, I mean, the International Olympic Committee list 5 high-performance supplements. Caffeine is top of their list.
Yeah.
I think what people maybe need to understand is the dosaging, where it can be very effective. Obviously, there are potentially some negatives to caffeine in terms of higher dosage or using caffeine later in the day. But as a performance aid, like you say, as an ergogenic aid, it's going to increase alertness. It's going to reduce the kind of perception of fatigue. Caffeine doesn't supply energy. There's no calorie value behind it. People often think, oh, I'll have caffeine before training because it gives me a pick-me-up. All it's doing, like I say, is just increasing your alertness and making you kind of, super hyper-focused potentially.
Yeah.
The research obviously then shows that if you're going into a session, let's say with a reduced risk of feeling fatigued and a heightened focus, you're able to therefore perform better. Whether we're looking at it from an aerobic point of view, whether we're looking at it from a kind of, a more kind of S&C point of view, the research shows the results that are tenfold.
Yeah.
Like I said, just cycling back round, it's key to be aware of the dosages. And this is something obviously you want to practice and just play around with a little bit. Don't wait until 1 RM day or 5K time trial day to suddenly smash a load of caffeine. You might make yourself jittery. It might increase your heart rate.
Sort of agitation and anxiousness that sometimes comes with it.
Something you want to play around with. Obviously, with caffeine, you can get caffeine from a wide range of sources. You go to a coffee shop, there's energy drinks. Caffeine gum is a very useful product as well that you can potentially use. Using a product that has labeling and you know exactly how much caffeine in it will be useful if you want to use caffeine in this way.
Yeah.
If you just want to have a cup of coffee, a double espresso, crack on. But if you want to dial in a little bit more, you want to be thinking about somewhere between 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight.
Okay. Yeah, that's a decent number overall. I think the interesting thing that comes to my mind when we think about dosage on that front, and you're talking from a performance perspective, is that you have to factor in what your kind of lifestyle usage of caffeine is as well. So if you're somebody who, and I have been this person, I keep talking about how much I love coffee, but I make sure to dose it as much intelligently as I can. But if you're somebody who's having 7 or 8 cups of coffee a day, and then you try and also use it as a performance aid, you're going to find the benefits limited, stunted, if not negative, because you are so tolerant that those kind of, as I say, performance benefits are now no longer available to you. So you have to make sure and clear the board a little bit for that, and intelligently spike that dose where it is. And as you say, make sure that you're not spiking it too far. There is a little bit of kind of play with this. Those recommendations you gave are kind of an open window for people. Somebody who's less tolerant needs less. Somebody who's more tolerant would need more, or work on their tolerance. So there's a little bit of play there. It's a psychoactive drug ultimately, isn't it? Caffeine. So if you're using it constantly, then you're in this kind of state of sort of caffeine fatigue almost. You've pushed yourself to a point where it's no longer useful for you.
Yeah. Let's
reduce, and then see where that kind of bite point is. We don't want to take people's coffee away. There'll be fights, but we do want to say, if you're drinking, if your coffee intake or your tea intake or Coca-Cola or whatever way you're taking your caffeine in a kind of what's the word I'm looking for there, in a sort of a passive way, then think about that before you start thinking, okay, Tom's given us recommendations on this number, I'll just throw this extra caffeine hit in the middle of my already massive caffeine intake and expect a performance kind of feedback.
Yeah, and something I commonly see people get wrong with caffeine as well is taking it too close to the session. Yeah. Particularly if you're someone who does feel a bit jittery or you don't like the sensation of your heart rate being a bit higher, is actually taking caffeine kind of 45, 60 minutes before that session.
Yeah,
so it can really be in the bloodstream. You might actually then feel a little bit calmer. So you've got the benefits of it, but you're not then going into that session really jittery. I often see that with, kind of performance athletes. I want them to be hyper-focused, but I don't want them to be jittery.
Yeah. So it's not useful to smash your caffeine supplement as you're going into the gym or as you want to get that in. Yeah, good advice that actually, because that's something that can happen very often. Is we'll discuss this with other supplements as well. You can have this kind of negative effect during the workout itself that then kind of negates if it's throwing your concentration off, if it's making you feel anxious during, and your focus is all over the shop, then you've probably used it wrong. So 60 minutes would be my recommendation. What did you say? 45 to 60 minutes.
45 to 60.
Yeah. So allow yourself time for that to enter the system and to sort of settle, for want of a better word.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, and all hail coffee. The next one I mentioned actually just then about the sort of gym effects, the way that this can be, it can actually make you feel bad in the gym, and this is one I think that people get wrong, and we can discuss that to a certain degree. The next supplement we're going to discuss is beta-alanine. I'll let you talk about that, and then I'll dive back in again, and where I find I have problems with this, and I know that I think you're nodding your head, knowing what I'm going to say. But let's talk about beta-alanine from purely performance perspective, and what we see as being the benefits of it, and how we interact with that.
Beta-alanine, effectively, what we're talking about here is lactic acid buildup. Mm-hmm. We've all had it: gym, running, bike kind of based workouts. Now, lactic acid isn't necessarily the bad guy. What we want to be thinking about is, can we, one, delay that lactic acid buildup, but then actually, can we buffer it, and can we think about a way to utilize that as effectively a little bit of energy?
Yeah.
Now, beta-alanine, unlike say caffeine, beta-alanine is more. If you think about cycling back, to how we spoke about creatine, beta-alanine is something that you need to take consistently, and this is something that I sometimes see people get wrong: is that beta-alanine is often in maybe a pre-workout supplement. It's stacked with other elements. So people might take it X number of times per week. They might not take it consistently. So therefore they're not going to get the benefit unless they're taking it and have had a period where they can again build up that saturation.
Yeah, this regular exposure to it is vital and necessary. Hence the problems I've had in the past, which is you think, I'll try this, and you have a smash of the beta-alanine, and then your face feels like it's, itchy and with paresthesis, and you feel your fingers and your face tingling. It can be, it sounds funny, but it can be really very uncomfortable. So this is my sort of anecdotal, get past what I've done wrong. We're talking a long time ago when this was less available, but to me it seemed like, why would you take this stuff? It didn't feel great, and I didn't want to take it. And what I'd missed by singularly dosing in this sort of manner, expecting some kind of I feel mad good here effect, was I'd missed exactly the nuance you've described, which is to sort of build up that opportunity for your body to kind of align with this stuff and for you to experience it in the right way and therefore get the benefits. If you just take a mad dose, have a think about it, it's like anybody. The first ever pre-workout you take, you're going to think, God, that's awful.
Yeah. So with beta-alanine, I think there's a great crossover in terms of whether we're looking at, muscular endurance, muscular performance, whether we're looking at anybody who's doing, from a mile all the way up to kind of marathon distance, there's benefit to, working under fatigue at that kind of sub-maximal aerobic effort. Something, again, maybe people aren't just aware of is that because beta-alanine is often stacked in a pre-workout supplement, they think they have to take it pre-workout. Whereas like creatine, it just needs to be saturated in your body. So you can buy beta-alanine as a standalone powder. And if you don't like the skin tingle sensation, then you can split the dose. Or what I often get athletes to do is water it down. So add it to a 2-litre bottle and sip on it across the day. Does not have to be taken around your training. Your muscles just have to be saturated with it. So you need to be taking between about 3 to 6 grams per day, 7 days a week, for around 3 to 4 weeks to become fully saturated.
There you go.
Now
We're back to the creatine kind of process, aren't we?
Yeah, and you can actually then not take it for a couple of weeks if you don't want to. There's no reason not to. You might as well keep taking it. But again, if you go on holiday, if you have a bit of time off or whatever, then that's absolutely fine to kind of cycle it on and off. But I think that's a common maybe misconception is because it's in a pre-workout product, because let's say people are used to just taking it around their training, they think they have to. No, you could take it any time of day, split the dose, dilute the dose if you're not a fan of it. The key thing, like creatine, is remembering to take it 7 days a week.
Yeah, and the performance benefits are not dissimilar either in the sense of the research suggests, with both creatine and beta-alanine, actually, I think the research is now, there's more research into aerobic benefits that's becoming more relevant. I read a great paper about wrestlers trying this, and when the protocols were right, the effort was more sustainable over repeat bouts. With wrestlers, it's a very hard anaerobic push, and then you're going to have to try and sustain that for another one, etc., etc. So these kind of 1 to 10 minute bouts of high output energy. So I guess taking it away from wrestlers, we're maybe talking about anything between 100 meters and I don't know what, maybe a kilometer or something. You can experience excellent benefits for those kind of things. But then that kind of repeatability is massively beneficial as well. So yeah, a great supplement to stack and a great supplement to discuss in this manner, because as you say, people will have definitely made the same mistake I've made. That kind of pre-workout, I'll take this on a Tuesday because that's my big day, and then next week I'll take it on a Tuesday, not realizing that they're actually, that you really might as well pour it down the drain in that sense, and you're experiencing that paresthesis that you don't want. The little notes that I've made, again, not dissimilar to creatine in a sense, is that there are these outside of performance benefits. The research is suggesting benefits that are way beyond the scope of performance. There's potentially, now we need to be very careful how we word that, but there are potential benefits to the relief of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and many other things. Anti-aging, I think, was one. So you're looking at these things as kind of, and this is where we're coming at it from, to be fair. But there are sort of external or benefits beyond that these things might provide us. So once again, we're kind of sliding into that. Should Jonny say superfoods? Should wonder drugs? Neither. But I guess this brings us back to that kind of crossover spectrum that we discussed at the beginning of the show, isn't it? Is that there are kind of lifestyle benefits to these things that are beyond the scope of just smashing a pre-workout. What's that thing people do now that's insane? Dry scooping. Stop dry scooping your things and actually start thinking about it as being something that's more holistic.
Yeah.
The other word that I hate, but the more holistic and more lifestyle based, and then you can see the benefits from that, the same as you can see the benefits from having more fruit and veg, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, think of it longer term, I think, and beta-alanine fits where people don't think it fits into that category, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like what we're doing here. We've kind of built this like non-negotiable stack. We've then put in, some good evidence-based supplements. The final two we're going to discuss still have a lot of evidence behind them, a lot of positive evidence, have been highly recommended. I think there may be things to consider. They might not be for everybody. Maybe we're moving a little bit more higher up the pyramid in terms of, we're talking about obviously good basics underneath, good habits, good protocols. Then we're thinking, say about adding the non-negotiable supplements in, performance-based supplements, and now maybe supplements to consider if you're doing everything else.
If everything else is in place, exactly. This
all those ducks in line.
Exactly, this hierarchical. We discussed that before. It's if you haven't got all the other bits in place, and what you're doing is just pissing in the wind, really, aren't you? You've got to get these first things stacked. But there are benefits to what we're going to talk about, and very much, certainly, I think we're going to look at the very last one we discussed. There are ways you can get that wrong very easily. So let's discuss that. But let's go with nitrates first. And people will see that probably more so as things like beetroot shots and stuff like that.
Exactly.
What's happening there, Tom?
So nitrates, the majority of research has been done around beetroots. But nitrate-rich food is something I think a lot of athletes should consider adding in. Nitrates will act as a vasodilator. So effectively, what we're thinking about doing is opening up veins and arteries so that we can increase blood flow. So we can get oxygenated blood into the working muscles, which can therefore reduce the amount of effort used. Therefore, you can work harder or more sustained effort for longer. First instance I kind of came across with nitrates was like rugby and team sport, but now the research was often always around endurance, but now there's research showing that it helps with strength, kind of reducing muscular fatigue, muscular endurance as well. So for people probably listening to this who are doing a bit of both, doing multidisciplinary events, I think hybrid athletes, I think it sits really, really well. Now, you can get nitrates from food. So you can beetroot, rhubarb, rocket, pomegranate, etc. But again, to get the amount that you need, that's a lot of beetroot. So this is where...
I like beetroot, but not that much beetroot.
Not that much. So this is where beetroot shots can come in. And again, you can use a supplement to help you hit the requirement to see that performance aid.
Nailed it. The one thing I was going to ask you, just for the benefit of any listeners, was... where would you find that in your food speed? But you've given me a perfectly good list there. It's worth trying. Again, as we say, after a certain point, we want to make sure that all those foundational points are in place. But as you say, the aerobic research is there, and that's where people look at it. But short, high intensity bouts, there's much more there to say that this can be really beneficial. So
yeah, absolutely,
across the board.
If people, again, try it in training. Don't wait to race day or competition day. You can load nitrates. So the research shows that you could take 1 to 2 shots for anywhere between 2 to 7 days before an event. There is now also research that shows it does have a one-off effect as well. So you can consume a nitrate shot kind of 90 minutes to 2 hours before that session. As always, practice, replicate. Don't wait until the day of high performance to get the most out of it. It can have a bit of a negative effect in terms of, one, they don't taste nice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for people. And two, you can have too much of it. It can create a different color of your urine that can be a bit unsettling for people to see. And some people may struggle, maybe from a GI point of view. It kind of passes through them a bit quickly, feel a bit uncomfortable. So then maybe it's not for you. So again, it's something to try, see how you get on with it. But the feedback that I've often had from people in team sports, from people maybe running half marathon distance, high rocks races, has always been quite positive. So maybe it's something, again, we're putting in this to consider category.
Yeah. A good point that you've just made there, mate, that we'll make before we discuss this last supplement and wrap up. A good point you've made there is when you're saying about try these things, and we're talking about developing this kind of pyramided approach, get the foundations right, then move on to the next stack, move on to the next, and work up to the pointy end at the top, the grain of sand on top of the dune that I've described it as. Is take a scientific approach to this. It doesn't mean you have to be nerdy and have to be, anal about these things. But if you take a scientific approach to it, what we don't want people to do is come away from the show and think, oh, well, I'll try beta-alanine. I'll also try nitrates. I'll also try this, try that. Because you're not going to know which one's working for what. So stack them, perhaps in the order we've described them today. Let's take some time to try creatine, see how that works for you, make some notes about your metrics, your performance, your RPE, etc. Once you decide, there is a benefit there, which we're confident you will, move on to the next one. play with your coffee intake and all the rest of it, and then say, okay, because otherwise, if you put all these things, okay, well, Jonny and Tom have been talking about creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, nitrates, and the next one. I'm going to slam all them in my diet. I have got a great diet, so I'm able to try which one's working for you. You've no bloody idea. Neither have I. I can't help you. So make sure that we do this in a kind of a staggered approach. There's no rush to get these things right. If you weren't taking them in the first place, then it's get it right. And the order you choose to do that, and it's down to you. I think the order we're giving is intelligent, but crack on with that, but make sure you know which variable is the one that's actually providing the benefit. And that's a simple scientific approach, but it doesn't feel like that as long. Take your time, I suppose, is the advice there. I don't want that to slip through my memory, which is great because of all the creatine I take, but there. So let's go on to the last one. The reason I've kind of hinted at this being a kind of an odd one and one where people can make a lot of mistakes is probably down to dosage and intake. But let's talk about sodium bicarbonate. People might know this with bicarb, or probably will have it in their house if they are a fan of cooking and cakes, some bicarbonate of soda. How is that working for us? Seems odd, doesn't it?
Does sound odd, doesn't it? This, again, is acting as a little bit of a natural buffer. We're talking here about balancing out a pH and an acidity imbalance when you're training, particularly, again, around this kind of 1 to 10 minute time frame of effort. Now, where you may see it come up is a little bit more kind of half marathon endurance sport. And people think, well, it doesn't take me 10 minutes to run a half marathon, but there will be periods within that race where you are pushing harder, you're floating between kind of aerobic, anaerobic exercise.
Yeah.
And obviously in the training for that as well, you're going through repeated bouts of effort and intensity. So similar in the way that beta-alanine, we're thinking about, delaying fatigue and then kind of reutilizing the waste product. We're just talking about here, balancing that acidity and that pH level. Now, sodium bicarb comes with a big warning, a big caveat here. It can and probably will, the first time you use it, cause GI issues. I do believe the quality of products and the way that you can take this on board now.
Yeah, the way that you can take it, carry on top of it, that's key.
It is improving vastly. It used to be a product that you just used to kind of mix based upon a percentage or a gram per kilo. But now there are much, much better products out there on the market. I've only had a handful of athletes use it, but the feedback has been fantastic. Yeah,
the feedback is fantastic. But going back to that scientific method, you're going to make sure all the other things are in place first. Jumping around a little bit on that, but you've just sort of triggered some thoughts, and they'll go away if I don't act on them now. But the mechanism, we'll talk dosage, and then the mechanism of intake, and then. But the one thing that crossed my mind when you were talking there was the bout of activity is key. So the if anybody's heard of a Wingate test, have you ever done one? I've done a few.
Long time ago.
Yeah, yes. They're absolutely horrendous, but it's ultimately a 30-second test after a little bit of trial and error to get that right, and it's brutal. It's not going to help you in that. What it's going to help you on is if you're doing some kind of protocol where there is repeat bouts, and it's the repeatability of that, and as you say, this kind of buffering, this metabolic acidosis that's happening internally, that allows that repeatability to happen. So it's not going to give you, I guess, like a spike of energy, or it's not going to give you an opportunity for sudden burst of power. But what it will give you, as you described perfectly with the half marathon example, is the opportunity to kind of repeat that boost, that activity, because you're buffering the things that would halt that, essentially. But you're never even going to start that half marathon if you, as I said earlier on, and I was giggling in my head about people dry scooping bicarb, which I have seen and heard of. You're like, oh, bicarb, okay, well, I'll smash some of that and then go. And then they're literally 30 seconds down the track and yakking that back up, and it's a very uncomfortable experience. So what would we say, apart from the fact that there are more and more products kind of allowing a smoother ingestion process, what would be kind of the protocol you would describe here with dosages if you got them?
Yeah, dosages would be 0.2 to 0.5 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
So with that framework, I would always recommend start smaller, and you want to give it time to digest. So you're looking, I say minimum 60 minutes, but you could take it anywhere kind of 2 to 3 hours before that exercise.
Yeah,
So
which is where this dry scoop before you go, just like, no. Once again, you do not have to smash this pre-workout.
Yeah. Carbohydrates will aid absorption as well. And this is where, again, now some of the better products that are coming out have a carbohydrate solution that you can mix with the sodium bicarb to aid absorption as well. So yeah, just thinking about if you are going to try it out, again, do it in training first. Don't wait to race day. You might
very, very good advice with this particular product.
Exactly, and again, you might want to think about lower dosage. Start small. Also, make sure that you're well hydrated when consuming this product as well. It's often something I would talk a lot about to kind of more endurance based kind of triathlete. People training in that kind of ecosphere, is that if you're well hydrated, your gut and digestive system performs better effectively. So going right back to the start and talking about electrolytes, there's another kind of benefit there in terms of starting your day by getting adequately hydrated to ensure that, the chemical reactions you're going to ask your body to do, your body will perform better if you're more optimally hydrated.
Yeah, full circle there. Yeah. I guess it's intelligent for us to try and start that sentence again. Sodium bicarbonate, we're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong here, roughly quarter of that mixture, if you like, that setup with sodium bicarbonate is sodium. So I think there's probably a cause to say if you've got salt-sensitive hypertension or any issues on that front, be cognitive of that, because we're already talking about sodium and the interaction with hydration, et cetera, et cetera. Just make sure that you know what you're doing on that front. I guess that's just a sort of cover our ass kind of comment. Well, it's a COA moment for us that we want to say, if you do this right, this can be an excellent benefit, performance benefit. If you do it wrong, you're going to find that immediately, and there could be downstream effects that you want to be aware of beforehand. But it's on our list for a reason. And you said as well, and my experience has been, with sprinters actually had been my experience mostly, is the feedback's astonishing. The immediate response from these athletes who had gone through this process, let's try this now, because everything else was stacked up that pyramid, was fucking hell, this is outrageous. And then there's this kind of, and we've got this in the kitchen at home. This is wild. How does this work? But as you've described, there are mechanisms at play which are really quite effective. This buffering effect is wonderful. So, yeah, baking soda. Who knew? We did. I guess we did do a full circle there. So we won't sort of heavily summarize, but I think it's worth saying once again, just for everybody's sake, is that this kind of pyramidal approach, this make sure you've got all your shit in order before you start moving on to the next thing. This intelligent scientific approach is something we really want to hammer home. Make sure you've got the fundamentals in place before you move on to stage 2, which might be however you prioritize. We've given a list. We've said get all your food, as you said, your omega-3s, the food quality, the color on the plate, all these things in place, and then start thinking, now I'm going to move on. Everything there is good. I feel good. I feel healthy. All my markers are good. And we're going to try creatine there. Give that time. Use the protocols we've described, and let's see what the performance benefit of that. We're almost able to guarantee that you will find a performance benefit from that. If you're tracking this stuff right, it can be very metrically easy to control, and then move on. Let's do some play with caffeine here. Let's see how that affects you negatively or positively. Let's find the bite point for that, and then move on. And all these supplements, we think, so creatine, caffeine, beta-alanine, nitrates, and sodium bicarbonate, and there are others, but these are the ones we want to focus on, can be excellent. But let's play the game intelligently as performance athletes, and play the long game, I think is a good advice.
Yeah. And look, I get plenty of questions about supplements. So if people are unsure, then reach out. I don't want people to kind of spend money where they don't need to, let's say not be consistent, not get the dosages right. I'm a big fan of sending people to examine.com as well, which is a fantastic
great site.
website which pulls in all the research, all the data, and will give you a very crystal clear picture of if this supplement works, yes or no. as a practitioner, I will always go off evidence first. Like I say, the things we've mentioned about today, stacks of research, stacks of data behind that. There are obviously supplements that work for some people and don't work for others, but I will never hang my hat on something unless there is enough research and data behind it. But if in doubt, reach out, drop me a message on Instagram, pop a message when I do Q&As. If you want a bit more support, there's a consultation link on the website, so you can book in there. And, supplementation is a big part for me of building out a nutrition plan for someone, whether we're looking at minimizing nutrient deficiencies or helping take their performance to the next level. Let's say in combination with things like blood work and other testing metrics that we can really help move the needle and hopefully, let's say, accelerate someone's performance, enhance their recovery, or do both.
Perfect, mate. Perfect. You have encapsulated all the thoughts I had for the end of this show perfectly, which is reach out. I, for one, genuinely love these conversations because, all we've done within the podcast here is kind of try to open people's eyes to some ideas and pin in some, be conscious of this, think of that, here's the benefits, etc. But it's such a vast subject that when you want to kind of sculpt it and make it about you, I'll be asking you some questions as we come out of here. Then reaching out is kind of obvious, and hopefully we've piqued your interest. Hopefully we've settled some kind of maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should debates, and hopefully people can come away with this with a kind of a positive idea of moving forward. But any questions, please don't come see me, come see Tom. And once again, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, mate. I'm really excited to have you back again as soon as we can. We're going to try and encourage you to move up here so that we don't have to wait too long. But in the meantime, thanks very much, Tom.